you want, there's a lot of room over here. Way out to the left. Thank you very much. We've had tremendous 6 months, and we've had 2 weeks, which now is, I guess, 3 weeks. We have a tremendous group of people here that have done a great, unified, beautiful job. I want in particular, because of what she's gone through this last few days, done an incredible job. As you know, Christy, I'm going to ask you to say a few words about Texas. The first person there was first person I saw on television was you, actually. And you've worked great with the governor, who's terrific. And you might want to tell a little bit about the trials and tribulations, but we appreciate the job that you and everybody have done. You had people there as fast as anybody's ever seen, so really appreciate it. We all do, and maybe you could say a few words.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank you for your leadership. Texas is strong, and the people of Texas are incredibly strong. They've gone through something that is absolutely horrific, and it is heartbreaking to watch these families suffer the way that they are. As soon as this flash flooding event happened, the governor has activated his emergency responders. Nim Kidd is his emergency management director, who is incredible, and has immediately worked with the local first responders to get help to individuals and get them evacuated, put requests into me. We deployed, sir, right away, as you know, because you and I were talking a lot during this time, the Coast Guard. We also had some assets out of Customs and Border Protection. Our BORTAC teams went in and helped with rescues and clearing debris so that we could get roads open and people get the help that they need. I think when I got there the most, sir, that day, as soon as I arrived on site, was getting a briefing from all the emergency responders, was just how unified they were in focusing on the fact that we're there to save lives. They were there to rescue people, find people who were still alive, and to reunify them with their family members. We as a federal government don't manage these disasters. The state does. We come in and support them, and that's exactly what we did here in this situation. FEMA went to an enhanced level immediately, but as soon as you signed the major disaster declaration, we were able to get them resources and dollars right away, just like you envisioned, through state block grants to help them with cleanup. And we're still there in presence, and FEMA's been deployed, and we're cutting through the paperwork of the old FEMA, streamlining it much like your vision of how FEMA should operate, and it's been a much better response to help these families get through this terrible situation. We still are looking for people. We're still looking for a lot of little girls and other family members that were camping along that river, and they will continue until they find every single person, and we will continue to help them and assist in that. I was surprised when I got there at the camp that day, right after this happened, the parents that were there, the parents that were looking for their children and picking up their daughter's stuffed animals out of the mud and finding their daughter's shoe that might be laying in the cabin, and just hugging and comforting people matters a lot. I'm extremely grateful for God's hand in that whole situation, because hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people were saved. And this is a time for all of us in this country to remember that we were created to serve each other. God created us to take care of each other. And that when we do that, we are happier, we are more fulfilled, and we can walk alongside people on their worst day and help them get through it and come out the other side, knowing that we can continue to live a life that God has purposed for us. So they're grateful for you. Several times the day after the flooding, you and Melania were on the phone with me, and I want to thank you for that. That meant the world. I was able to tell many of those folks that I had been visiting with you, and that you had said, whatever they need, Christy, let's deploy it and get it down there and be helpful. And on Sunday, when the families were waiting at a church to identify their children's bodies, Franklin Graham and I called in and prayed with the families and read some scripture with them, and he was incredible in making himself available to that as well. We'll be back down there in a couple of days and continue to do all we can, but this is an unprecedented event. It really is. There's been tragedies like this around the country, but everyone is unique in different situations, and the response the federal government had supporting the state through this, I'm proud of the people that stepped up and immediately came. The Coast Guard, when they came in, they had a difficult time even getting the aircraft in and landed. They had to try several times in the weather to get it in and deploy, and I think we've heard about, our one Coast Guard member that was responsible for saving over 165 people, but that entire crew did incredible work. And all the first responders there did incredible work. And I know people are getting tired now, but they're getting reinforcements and volunteers are showing up. And I just want to commend the governor and his team for being the leaders. And they're so thankful that you're letting them make the decisions and manage the response like it should be. And then us supporting them with the resources of the federal government. We've already deployed dollars to the state, much like the block grants that you've talked about.
Right.
So they're grateful for that, sir.
There's never been a wave like this outside of the breaking of a dam, because this was almost a wave that ended up being 30 feet high, more actually. Now with a dam you can understand it, but this approached almost with that speed. When you see a dam break, it's not a pretty sight. It wipes out everything, and this is the kind of thing that built up so fast. And it's happened 2 or 3 times before over the years, but not to this extent. But tell them when you met, picking up the daughter's clothing. And
I had walked through
so
the
sad.
cabin where all the little girls died, and I had kind of fallen apart in there, but I walked out of the cabin, and a gentleman was standing there, and he said, that man over there needs a hug. And so I walked over to him, and I hugged him, and I said, do you work here? And he said, no, my little girl was in that cabin. And he said, and I just found her best friend about an hour and a half ago. She had passed away. And he just fell apart. And so then we just hugged and talked for probably an hour about that. But then there was the grandpa was there looking for his granddaughter as well. There was a dad there of one of the counselors. The counselor was alive, but she was dealing with the fact that she had hung on to some of these girls and was trying to keep them out of the floodwaters, and had gotten hit by something and had lost 2 of the girls and wasn't able to hang on to them, and was going to live the rest of her life thinking about that moment when she wasn't able to hang on to these girls. But these parents were picking up their kids' belongings out of the mud and throughout the camp and putting them in bags. And then one of the dads said, I knew 50 of these girls here. So I knew that was her dress and my daughter's friend's dress. So he was picking it up and putting it in a bag to return to her parents. And so it was and then the director was there comforting everybody who had lost his father the night before too. And he was still there trying to facilitate all of these parents grieving their children and find them. So the strength of people is incredible. One of the things that I asked there today, that day, was that they all have escorts or counselors when parents come in. So from that point, that when they came into the camp, that they have somebody with them when they're going and looking for their children's belongings or looking for their children. And so, very emotional, but also just so tragic.
The relationship with Texas and the governor has been obviously very good for years with me, but the relationship with Texas and their first responders and us with our first responders and lots of other people, and we brought in a lot of helicopters from all over, and we had a lot of helicopters. It was actually dangerous, a lot of helicopters up there, but they were real pros, and they were responsible for pulling out a lot of people, and we got them there fast, and Texas had some good ones too, but the response has been incredible, and the fact that we got along so well, I don't know, I don't even think that's a political thing, but we got along so well, and it was so unified. I think a lot of lives have been saved. That could have been as bad as it was, and you could have lost double or triple. This thing was just really horrible. Well, Congratulations on a great job, and appreciate it. I know you're going down. I'll be going down on Friday with First Lady. We'll be taking a trip, and we don't want to get in anyone's way because that's what happens. The president goes and everyone's around focused on. I don't want anyone to focus on us, but it's possible they could have somebody saved still.
Yes,
There's a lot of areas. It's a big area, and probably unlikely at this point, but there could be. I mean, they're thinking there could be the possibility, but what a tragic situation. A good job, and we'll see you on Friday, and we'll finish out the day here. I think you've been reading a lot about, it's a terrible topic when you talk about financial after this, but we have a big country and we've been doing very well. The tariffs, as you know, are starting to come in at record levels. Tremendous amounts of money are coming in to our country. We never did that before. We're not used to it. We only have tariffs going out. We only adhere to the rules of other nations who charge us tremendous tariffs because we were led by stupid people or people without any business sense. And I'd like to ask God, you could maybe talk a little bit about how well we're doing with regard to the money coming in. And the big money will start coming in on August 1st. I think it was made clear today by the letters that were sent out yesterday and today. Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. We will taken in about $100 billion in tariff income thus far this year, and that's with the tariffs, the major tariffs not having started till the second quarter. So we could expect that could be well over $300 billion by the end of the year. We don't agree with CBO scoring, but for those who do, the CBO scored tariff income over the next 10 years at $2.8 trillion, which we think is probably low. And sir, under your leadership, we're witnessing.
And they gave us no credit during this last little, the great, big, beautiful bill. I always use the word great. I add that to it because it really is what it is. It's never been anything like it, actually. And I want to thank all the Republicans that voted for it. And I want to, scold the Democrats because they're voting for tax cuts. They're voting for no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and many, many other things far more important than that. Great health care. And frankly, every Democrat should lose their election because it was purely political to vote. They were told not to vote for it. So think of it, we got 218 to 2, and then with the Senate, we had 50 to 3. Democrats didn't vote at all, not one positive vote, with all of the good things in there. Economic development money, tremendous border money. Mm-hmm. Now you're loaded up on the border. And I hate so much of it because we had zero come in last month, so I'm not sure how much of it we want to spend. You may think about that. You may actually think about saving a lot of money because the wall's been largely built and it obviously worked, but you may want to think about that. But so I think it's incredible when I watch the Democrats, and they have standard lines like they had Russia, Russia, Russia. They had the laptop from hell. It all came from Russia. They make things up and they go with it, and they feed it to you people in many cases. And they said, "Here's our line," and I hear the new line is death. Oh, it's death. Everyone's going to die. There's nothing to do with death. In fact, we're saving our country. Death is from allowing 25 million people into our country, of which 3 or 4 are stone cold, hard criminals. 11,888 are murderers, many of them committing more than one murder. That's death, and the Democrats did that. Joe Biden did that by allowing people to come in here just totally unchecked, unvetted, open borders, open borders. The whole world was dumped into our country from prisons, from gangs, from mental institutions. We have many people walking the streets, walking in areas that we don't know anything about, that came out of insane asylums. They released their the insane asylum population into our country, and it's amazing the job that you and Tom Homan are doing, by the way, on that. But we have to get them out, and we have no choice. We have to get them out, and we are getting them out. And so, Pete, do you want to tell them about our great military and how well we did with respect to the bombers and the B-2? We had the pilots here 2 days ago, and they were incredible people. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Truly a historic mission. It demonstrated the skill and courage of the United States military. From those B-2 pilots and families that we had a chance to meet, sir, to the fighter pilots, to the refuelers, to the maintainers, to the air defenders who defended the base. What was demonstrated on the world stage was American military might and capability. And it wasn't just Fordo and Esfahan and Natanz that took notice in Iran. It was the rest of the world, that we have a decisive commander-in-chief willing to use these capabilities, which are the best in the world. As the president pointed out, no one else could have done what America did there on that night, and everyone took notice of that. With the One Big Beautiful Bill, sir, we've got $150 billion additional to invest in Golden Dome and all the other weapon systems and stockpiles and shipbuilding priorities of yours. Another month, another historic recruiting bump. It's not just the Army and the Marine Corps anymore, it's the Navy, the Air Force, and the Space Force, all historically ahead of where they've ever been. So historic spirit inside the military. We had a chance to be at NATO, Marco and I, and see how the world responds to us saying it's time for you to shoulder the burden and take the lead for your continent. That only happens with President Trump leading. And we're proud to be a part of what's going on at the border, sir, with now a fourth national defense area where we're helping get to that number 0 and securing the border. But that mission, Operation Midnight Hammer, re-established deterrence. It reversed what happened in Afghanistan. You saw the debacle of what Biden allowed to happen in Afghanistan and what that did to our image. President Trump said, with Operation Midnight Hammer, we're reestablishing American leadership and deterrence, and we're proud to be a part of it, sir.
And our so-called enemies were watching. They watched every minute of it. They watched. There was very few people that weren't watching, actually, but they watched every minute. It was a perfect military performance, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, if you compare that to the same country, the hostages from years ago, Jimmy Carter, it was unfortunate for Jimmy Carter. He was a nice man, but with the helicopters going down, the sandstorms, the prisoners, they got captured, then the election and the prisoners and Reagan and all the problems. It was nothing but problems. And that was a failure. And ours was not only the pilots. I mean, those machines flew for 37 straight hours. They didn't stop. They went skedaddle. You know the word skedaddle? It means skedaddle. They dropped the bombs and somebody said, skedaddle. Let's get the hell out of here. And every bomb hit its mark and hit it incredibly. And as you know, the Atomic Energy Commission said it's gone. That place is gone. We had a lot of fake reporting, mostly from CNN, where the scammer writer, a writer for CNN, who should be fired, by the way, she was involved with the 51 fake intelligence agents, if you remember that. She did that story, created a story out of it. She created a story out of the laptop from hell, saying it came from Russia, but it actually came from Hunter Biden's bedroom, or worse. Just a scammer, and she's still at CNN, which is pretty amazing. But we'll ask you a question about her. But they came up with this concept that maybe the attack wasn't that good. Maybe it, and I saw it happen right after the attack. I saw this person on CNN. I actually watch. I like to watch the enemy. You learn from the enemy. And I watch because you have to know where they're coming from. And I watched her say, Anderson, you know, I'm hearing stories that maybe they didn't hit their target. Maybe it wasn't that good a hit. And they were hearing stories. The next day it was a little more, and the next day a little more. After 3-4 days, she was saying, you know, I don't know. I don't think it was that, except by that time everybody knew it was hit perfectly. The evidence is in the planes. The evidence, well, the pilots are the best evidence. But they actually came out of their plane because they were here the other day and they said, it was so sad. We did such a good job. We flew into very dangerous airspace. I'll never forget, we were in the Situation Room and they said they have entered Iranian airspace, and everyone took a deep breath because they had more missiles pointed at them, but the equipment is so good, it's stealth, way up in the air, and it was stealth, and they went right through that, and they sort of, by the time they found out they were there, they were already gone. That was the word skedaddle, get the hell out of here. But they were right in the most dangerous airspace in the world, and they took those big, beautiful, very fast, they're unbelievable planes. I mean, they become really beautiful works of art. You know, I always thought they sort of were cool, but now they look better than just cool, don't they, huh? but they dropped the loads, and literally they would hit, if you look at this table, from here to there, they had a half a refrigerator door is the way to best explain it. Take a refrigerator door, average size, cut it in half. That was their target. They hit every single one. Then we had 30 missiles, Tomahawk, shot from submarines 300 miles away. Every one of them hit their target. It was a perfect mission. Then they came back, almost 37 hours. Every plane worked perfectly. The mechanics were here too. I said, you got to get the mechanics here. We didn't have any problems. If you remember, they had a lot of problems with the helicopters, but they did fly through a dust storm, which they shouldn't have done. Sometimes you say, let's go back and try it on a nicer day. Dust and sand don't work well with helicopters if you know much about helicopters, but that was a horrible embarrassment to us. Then we had Afghanistan, which I think was the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, and we would have gotten out. I was the one that got them down. I would have kept Bagram, the big air base, which right now is controlled by China, among the most powerful runways in the world, thick with concrete and steel. Anything could land, and right now, they were 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. I was keeping it. Outside of that, we were leaving, and I would have been out faster than them, but we would have gotten out with strength and dignity. Instead, that was the most botched up mess I've ever seen. They left all that equipment behind, and every year they have a parade running down some third-rate street with the equipment. You know, it's supposed to be Fifth Avenue. It doesn't work. But with all that equipment that they left, they should have taken every ounce of it. I was taking every ounce. I said every screw, every bolt, every nail you take out of there. And Millie said, I remember one time, sir, we're better off leaving the equipment. Why? Well, it's cheaper. I said, cheaper? You mean it's cheaper to leave a $150 million airplane rather than flying into Pakistan or India or someplace, or just flying it straight home? It's cheaper. Yes, sir. That's when I knew he was an idiot. Didn't take long to figure that one out. But they left all that equipment, but they left their dignity behind. It was the most embarrassing moment, in my opinion, in the history of our country. Not that we got out. We should have not been there, but that we got out the way we got out, with great embarrassment and death. You had 13 young people. I've gotten to know their families very well, but you had hundreds of people killed that nobody talks about. You had the other side, many people were killed. Many people are walking around with no legs, no arms from that whole thing. They left from the wrong airport. They should have left from Bagram, because Bagram was a big base with hundreds of miles of fencing and territory around it. Nobody would be able to get near it. And they left. So, we've done a great job, and I think people are really starting to see it. They're starting to appreciate it. Pete's done fantastically. That mission was a work of art. And I have spoken to some of our perceived, I don't know if they're enemies, but they're perceived as being potential enemies. And they essentially said the same thing, very impressive. There wasn't a thing that we didn't lose an engine. We didn't lose it. They landed and they were cheered. But the sad thing was they were cheered, and one of the pilots said, we were a little concerned because when we got out, we were told that on television they were reporting that we may have missed our targets. Sir, we hit every target. That's what I do for a living. We hit every target. In fact, when the bombs hit, a yellow haze came over the horizon that I've never seen before. It just lit up the whole horizon, brighter than the sun. It was like looking into the sun. He goes, we hit our target, because you know what that was exploding. And but they were a little downbeat because they listened to that fake CNN reporting and the fake New York Times. They worked together to try and say that it wasn't perfect. They couldn't say they missed. All they could say is, maybe it wasn't perfect. And you ought to fire that reporter immediately. You should fire her. Real fake. And so I just want to congratulate those pilots. And a lot of people don't like bringing things like that up. I do. I always like confronting, because otherwise the public doesn't know that you're a bunch of crooked people. But they know, they've learned, and the media has to straighten out their act. The media's down to 17% approval. You got to do a little better than that. It's important for the country that you do better. I think they ought to make a lot of changes. I think changes are going to be made to the media, but it's hard to have a really successful country if you have a corrupt media, and we really have a corrupt media. And nobody really knows why. I mean, why would you want to have open borders and criminals pouring into our country? Why would you want to have men playing in women's sports, transgender for everyone, you know? You'll have to figure that out. But some of you don't. I mean, I'm looking at some people, they love the country, but I look at other people and they can't. But we're really proud of our military. It was, and the people that maybe don't like us or want to play games with us, because I think that had you not had the situation in Afghanistan, I don't think Putin would have gone in. I think when Putin looked at how stupid and incompetent that operation was, he said, wow, this might be a chance. And we're dealing with him now too. We're not happy with Putin. I'm not happy with Putin. I can tell you that much right now, because he's killing a lot of people. And a lot of them are his soldiers and their soldiers, mostly. And it's now up to 7,000 a week. And I'm not happy with Putin. Okay, any questions? Yes.
Yes, sir. You just said that you're not happy with Vladimir Putin. Is there anything that you plan to do to act on that feeling of unhappiness?
Well, I wouldn't be telling you. Don't we want to have a little surprise? You know, one of the things we did with the attack is that, and you asked that question, I didn't mean to be rude, but I'm in a rude because I'm looking at some of these crooked people up here, so I'm rude, but your question was asked very nicely. But one of the things we did is we went over every fact. We wanted to get every fact straight. We wanted to have the distance straight, the number of pilots straight. Everything had to be correct, because we want to be, this was a very important mission. If we failed on this mission, it was beyond the war that, you know, obviously we had with Iran and Israel. A lot of hatred, a lot of years and years of hatred, centuries of hatred. People have never seen anything like it. So we wanted to be correct with all our facts. So, you know, what I was doing is just asking, it would be great if the media would be correct with their facts. That's all we ask for. So, go ahead. So finish it up.
Oh, yes. Just returning back to Russia, if there's anything that you would signal about your displeasure with them.
Well, look, I'm very unhappy with them. There's no reason for this. It's turned out to be tougher, but it's only tougher. And I will say the Ukrainians were brave, but we gave them the best equipment ever made. We gave them the anti-tank busters that knocked out tanks. I mean, you just aim them in the direction of the tank and the tank is gone. We gave them missiles, the latest and the greatest. They were able to shoot down a lot of things that would have normally wiped out. You know, probably would have been a very quick war. It would have been a war that lasted 3-4 days, but they had the benefit of unbelievable equipment. And Europe gave them to. We gave them far more because Biden shouldn't have done that. He should have equalized. We should have given them the same, or we should have given actually less than Europe. It affects Europe much more than us, but we're in there for over $300 billion. Europe's in there for over $100 billion, but still, Europe gave a lot. And I will say this, the Ukrainians, whether you think it's unfair that we gave all that money or not, they were very brave because somebody had to operate that stuff. And a lot of people I know wouldn't be operating it. They wouldn't have the courage to do it. So they fought very bravely. But we gave them the best equipment in the world. We make the best military equipment by far. There's nobody close. You look at other equipment from other countries, it's not even close. That's why everybody wants to buy our equipment. And that's why we're going to step up these contractors now that make it, and they're brilliant, but they make it too slowly. And we have to step them up, Pete, and let them make it at a much higher rate. Unfortunately, we have to do that. But if you look at our Patriots, if you look at our Tomahawks, if you look at our, well, what we do with tanks is, you wouldn't want to be driving a tank. You would feel nice and secure, but they are javelins, they're called. And I gave them the javelins. Remember they said Trump gave the javelins and Obama gave them sheets, right? They called Obama at that time. Barack Hussein Obama, if you haven't heard, did a terrible job. But that was a war that should have never happened, and a lot of people are dying, and it should end. And I don't know, we get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Do you want to sanctions him? Lindsey Graham has a sanctions bill on Russia. Do you want him to vote?
I'm looking at it, yeah, no, I'm looking. The Senate is passing and passed a very, very tough sanctions bill. Yeah, I'm looking at
Can
it.
you sign that?
It's an optional bill. It's totally at my option. They passed it totally at my option and to terminate totally at my option. And I'm looking at it very strongly.
Yesterday you said you want to send more weapons.
Go ahead, please.
The Council of Economic Advisors released a new report saying that imported goods have actually decreased in price from December
I know, it's not
through
amazing.
March. Well, my question is,
With the tariffs.
the Fed chairman keeps saying that tariffs are going to cause price increases.
Are we
Are the
talking-
prices just not
Chairman
passed
of the
through?
Fed?
Yes, exactly.
Well,
Are the prices,
you do a better job than him.
Thank you. Are the prices just not passed through yet?
No, I think what's happening is everything's evening out. You know, when we charge, see what people don't understand, the other countries have been charged, almost every country charges us tariffs. We had deficits with everybody for years, for decades. And we were like this big monolith that made bad deals with everybody. We rebuilt South Korea, we stayed there. It's okay, we rebuilt it and we stayed there. And they pay us very little for the military. I got them to pay billions of dollars, and Biden then canceled it when he came in. I said to South Korea, as an example, we give you free military, essentially, very little. And I think you should pay us $10 billion a year. And they went crazy. But they agreed to 3. So I got 3 with a phone call. And I was satisfied. I said, but next year we have to talk. And then we had a rigged election, and we never got to talk. And you know what Biden did? They probably went to him and they said, listen, Trump treated us terribly, and we shouldn't be paying anything, and he cut it down to nothing. So that's what happens. It's ridiculous. That's the other thing. We're talking to countries about contributing to the military, not only just paying more in NATO, but contributing. We have 45,000 soldiers in South Korea. We have 45,000 soldiers in Germany, 52,000 actually. And that's a huge economic development for them. That's tremendous amount. That's like having a city. It's tremendous money for them, and it's a tremendous loss for us. So we're talking, in a very nice way, we're talking to them about it. It's very unfair. We supply the militaries to many very successful countries. I mean, South Korea is making a lot of money, and they're very good. They're very good, but, they should be paying for their own military.
President Trump, I'll ask you a question about Jerome Powell as well, and then a question to the Attorney General. Jerome Powell, and then I have a question for the Attorney General. Jerome Powell, who you've been pressuring to lower interest rates, he's facing accusations of lying to Congress, which is a potential crime about the opulent.
Then he should resign immediately. We should get somebody in there that's going to lower interest rates.
Do you want congressional
Why don't
Republicans
you
to look
call
into
for
that?
his resignation?
Do you want congressional Republicans to investigate and
It's
pursue
okay
and
with
punish?
me. I think he's terrible. I think, look, we're paying, I call him too late. T-O-O, too late, like Too Tall Jones for the Dallas Cowboys, right? Too late. He's always late. But he wasn't late with Biden before the election. He was cutting him like crazy. It didn't help too much, did it? But he was cutting him like crazy before the election with Kamala and Biden. He was trying to get them in, I guess. I don't know. He was recommended by somebody that worked for me. I like you better.
If I could ask the Attorney General a question too, President.
Sure.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did, and also could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the stabbing?
Yeah, sure. If I
Pam,
could,
could I just interrupt for
Sure.
1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I
President.
mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons